Letters from a Lost Uncle by Mervyn Peake. First letter.
Dear nephew, I have decided to write you a letter. It is the first I have tried my hand at for many years. It will certainly be the last. I'm sick of it already, as a matter of fact. My fingers, which are as cold as icicles, were made for triggers and harpoons more than for all this tapping on a little black machine. Oh, blubber, take this thumb mark. Pickle my blubber, it makes me feel like a woman writing this letter to England when there's so much danger and excitement in the Arctic air to be getting on with. And not only this, but what with Jackson to be unloaded before he curls up to sleep, and what with my legs spiked to polish. I had better start by describing myself as best I can. It will be easier for you to picture me and understand my point of view. In fact, I will do a drawing of myself after I've given you a few measurements. I would be about 6 foot and 6 inches high in my sock if I hadn't worn it out. My distance round the middle doesn't matter so much, but it makes quite a journey there and back. It won't be easy to draw myself, as I can't remember my face very well. I'll do it on the next page, as there'll be more room. To fill up the space above, I'll draw the sea elephant I skinned a week or so ago. It had rather a beastly taste when I had fried it, but Jackson appeared to enjoy it. Oh, I'd forgotten that I'd already drawn a sea elephant. Yeah, not that it matters. Oh no, it was an elephant seal anyway. I think I look like this. But as I broke my only looking glass 12 years ago, you must remember it is from memory only. This is what artists call a full-length self-portrait. In the distance is the crag which I climbed before I lost my leg. No one else knows the way up. My igloo, with long tunnel which I favour.
Letter 2.
I won't have much time for writing this time, as I find I'm on a piece of floating ice the size of Kent. It has started moving in the opposite direction to where I want to go, so we've sent Jackson out to get the kayak ready, and then we'll paddle away to the northeast. It looks as though the next few days will be the most dangerous of my life. That is really why I've decided to write you this letter, which will be a kind of diary, I suppose. If I get killed or anything, perhaps these pages may be found. Although what good they'll be to anyone, I can't imagine. Unless I find the white lion first. Not that I intend to get killed. Eggs blubber. I'm not seasoned for nothing. Here's a drawing of Jackson, so that you can understand him. He's been my retainer for many years, and has no conversation, but I wouldn't swap him for 6 tins of condensed milk or a jug of hot rum. Oh, by the way, I am writing to you from an igloo in the polar waste. Now I must end this letter. Why did I ever begin it? And see if the kayak is ready, because I am. Oh, by the way, I haven't made a single mistake with my tapping on this page, have I? Oh, blubber it.
Second letter. Continued next day.
We've got a light on inside the igloo, so from the outside you'd see our shadows through the ice. I'm still in the igloo, although it's next day. A blizzard sprang up almost as I finished my last letter, and it's been howling outside like a hungry animal ever since. Oh, pickle me, but I can hardly feel the typewriter. My hands are so cold. Jackson is lying beside me, snoring heavily with one of his eyelids twitching every now and again. But it is getting warmer, because I've crammed up the entrance of my igloo with the hides of beasts. I have a good fire burning as well. The place is a bit smoky, but I can still see Jackson. It will be quite impossible for me to embark today, even though the island of ice that I'm on is being driven across the water as fast as a ship. Irritating as it is to be blown off one's course, yet it does give the chance of going on with this letter. Perhaps you've never heard of me before. I wouldn't be surprised. Explorers are soon forgotten, even by their relations. In fact, especially by their relations, I should say. Not that I ever write any letters home. This is the first. So if it reaches you, take care of it. Not only could I never start this sort of literary business all over again, but also I hope there will be vital information near the end of it about the white lion, which you can take to the Natural History Museum in South Kensington, if it's still there. Jackson has fallen asleep and looks even sillier than ever. Oh, sea leopard, elephant seal. And the sea leopard stew to prepare for supper. Go. I can't think why I began this letter tonight of all times. You won't know what this is yet, but I'll explain later. Nevertheless, I am your uncle, I suppose, and must fall to the task. For I have a reason. I will explain about it later. But for the moment, I will tell you one thing only so as to keep you on tender hooks. It is this. At the back of my reason for writing to you, at the back of it all, at the back of my mind, at the back of everything I believe in, is the white lion. The lion on the stamp, the emperor of the snows. This is a copy of part of the stamp, only bigger and freer. Even if the drawing of me isn't a speaking likeness, I do know that I have only one eye that works, one leg, and a single mind. I get along very well indeed, and I can't bear sympathy. As I can explain things better by making drawings as I go along, which I delight in doing, I do not want you to think that they are simply to please you. If you like 'em, that's all the better, but I would do them anyway. This is a good fat book with any number of blank leaves, so there's no fear of my not having enough paper, however many drawings I put on a page. For instance, from where I sit, I can see my right foot perfectly, and my leg spike too, with the inside of the igloo beyond. So as an example, I will make a drawing of it before I continue. It is getting rather stuffy, and I think I will loosen the hides in the igloo tunnel to let a little of the blizzard in. As you may have noticed, I have a leg spike, and what with this and my experience of violent things, I can deal with most emergencies. For instance, last Monday, when an Arctic polar wolf sprang at me, skinny with hunger and his teeth shining, I had only to do this, and it was all over. My leg spike originally belonged to a swordfish that attacked me in my kayak. We had a desperate encounter during which I lost my leg and he lost the spike off his nose, as well as his life. It occurred to me at once that it was just the same length as my missing leg, and I fitted it on that same evening, with pain and difficulty. Of course, I can't walk as fast as before, but it serves me in many ways, particularly in preventing me from slipping on the ice. Sorry about these blotches. but I just cut my finger. Yeah, but it's all right now with a snakeskin bandage wound around it. My fire has almost gone out. I've been so busy writing and drawing. How cold it has become. The gale is still howling outside, and I've let too much of it in through the tunnel. Yeah, I will end this letter now, as I want to get warm. About this time next month, I'll have built another igloo, miles and miles to the east from here, if this tempest hasn't carried me too far astray. Then I will be able to continue this letter, when the icy, dripping, bear-infested forests of petrified pine have been explored and the jagged mountains climbed. Then perhaps I can explain to you what it is exactly I'm searching for, how I left home, and why I'm telling you all this. Good night.
Third letter. Weeks later.
Floods and storms have happened to me since my last letter. Doesn't seem quite so bad writing to you this time. Not that I really enjoy it very much. But as I've explained, I have a reason for what I do and must persevere. I am no longer in the igloo, of course, but am many, many leagues further to the west, and the floating ice that was the size of Kent is left far behind. The last I saw of it was from my kayak, with the sun rising and staining it all pink and cold as it spread away from me and right over the horizon. When the tempest was at its height, the wind changed direction and blew the ice back to almost exactly where we started from. But that was several weeks ago, and the storms that I've encountered since then were huger still. For I came to the outskirts of a forest of trees that had been frozen into skeletons that never put forth leaves. As I entered the forest, the snow poured down until only our heads were above it, and a great wind galloped out of the mountains of clanging ice that stood around the forest, until the cold trees roared as though every one of them had a throat. Then came the sleet and hailstorms that snapped their branches off, one by one, to toss about in the wild snow. But I'll tell you all about that journey later, if I've got the time. For the moment, I will content myself with a few drawings of the beasts I met on the way, and also a drawing of the cabin I have built, and in which I am now writing you this letter. This is a moose, the knotted tail kind. Sorry about the thumb mark again. This is the cabin which I promised to draw. It also shows you the kind of landscape that surrounds it.
Fourth letter.
I'm very comfortable this evening with my explorations for the day completed. I have a feeling inside me that I am getting nearer and nearer to the White Lion. As I feel so contented, I think I will expand a bit in my letter. It is the first time I've looked forward to continuing it. I suppose it's because I like seeing how many words I've already written and all the drawings I've made. What I've been meaning to tell you all about is how I started this wandering life. Then you can see me in what old men call perspective, which only means that you can understand why I do certain things, because you know some of the things I did before. Anyway, I'll be as quick as I can with this part, because the reason for all this talk is the lion on the stamp, and everything else is only padding, as a matter of fact. Anyway, you will soon come out of the distant past and into the present again. As far as I'm concerned, it's the future that matters most. I'm longing to tell you about my project, but the time is not quite ripe. Oh, blubber! I've been such a long time without a drawing. It comes as a great relief to stop prodding at this little black machine and start making pictures again. There's a polar beetle crawling through the door of my hut, so I might as well draw that. I feel much better now that I've finished the beetle. Yeah, where was I in my letter? Oh, yes, I was going to tell you about my past. I was born in Tulsi Hill, but ran away within a week. They found me in Finsbury and brought me back and strapped me down in a cradle. When I was old enough to go to school, I drank so much ink on the first day that I was seriously ill until I was old enough to leave. Then I ran away from home. I got tired of being hungry, so I returned one night and ate my way through the larder. Yeah, I was ill again. This time until I was 22. When I married, I'd soon grown a beard, which I have never since shaved off. My wife despised it. About this time, I began to collect different kinds of insects, mushrooms and rats. The best place for them from the point of view of their health was the lounge. I began to notice that my wife was not so considerate as she used to be, so I had my meals out and usually slept in Cannon Street Station. Between times, I went a lot to the Natural History Museum in South Kensington, or made drawings of the 4 lions in Trafalgar Square. I now realized that all the lions were exactly the same, so I might have saved myself a lot of time. What with the lions and the Natural History Museum, I whipped my imagination into a frenzy. A hungry longing to see the world overtook me, and I decided to leave my native land and, come what may, that I would set sail for the tropics. When my wife, who looked like this, poor thing, and still does, I expect, heard of my intentions, the end of her nose grew as cold as ice, and her ears burned like beetroots. She was very, very angry. And when all her brothers and sisters heard about it also, they said they had always known that I was mad and were very angry too. I can never understand why, because we never had anything in common. But my wife was the most irritated of all, because she had to make arrangements to live with each of them in turn, a week at a time, because she had no money of her own. Nor had I. Not one of them was able to see the situation in perspective. Anyway, there was not a soul would see me off to Victoria Station. I was soon at the coast, and on board the SSM, a sprightly craft with orange and blue funnels. Whether her name was short for Empire or Emu, I never found out. It always seemed to me to be rather brief for a ship of her length. Nevertheless, the food was very good, and a welcome change after my wife's cookery, for I had spent my last 3 days under my own roof. No more roofs for me, not the plaster sort anyway. Not many weeks after I had gone on board, the weather had changed into something so golden that I took my stiff collar off and threw it into the sea. Since then, I have never worn a collar, and I shall never start that sort of nonsense again. Many and various things happened to me at the coloured ports, in the black harbours, and up creeks of fever. Where the great trees along the banks of tropical rivers bent over our ship as we steamed along, down endless tunnels of deep green. The fruit and nuts fell plunk, plunk, rat-a-tat as they first struck the deck, for they were always being knocked off the overhanging branches by the masts of the SSM. I remember how the monkeys and the great apes would swing like shadows across the green gloom above us, catching hold of the mastheads with their long hairy arms and swinging back again into the riverside trees. And all the frightful noise of their chatterings and the screaming of parrots that made the air bloodshot with their wings. Oh, and then there were the days when I leaned on the ship's railing and gazed over the ocean, rubbing my beard and smoking the pipe I carved out of the leg of my wife's favourite armchair. I used to meditate quite a lot, which will surprise you, I expect, for as you know, I am a man of action. One summer evening, I was pondering thus over the ship's railing. Below me, in the ocean, a shark swam swiftly alongside the ship, and I was amusing myself by throwing it little pieces of cheese, which it caught cleverly in its mouth. Beyond the shark, the reflection of an enormous moon bobbed about on the waves. Suddenly, I stopped throwing cheese, for an idea struck me. For I suddenly realized that I had never asked anyone where the ship was sailing to. Well, there was no one else on deck, so I couldn't make enquiries. I'd been pondering so long that it must have been nearly midnight. You see, when I left England, I had been so excited to get away that I never troubled to ask which way the ship was steering, except that it was toward the tropics. I went down to my cabin, the cheese being finished. But I couldn't get to sleep. It was so hot. The Negro, whom I shared the cabin with, was snoring loudly, so I shook him. Yeah, but he only turned over and began again, worse than before. So I got up and went up on deck again, this time in my dressing gown. Imagine my excitement when I reached the railing, when I saw, away across the moonlit sea, a line of glittering mountains. At once, and almost without thinking, I made one of the most important decisions of my life. I ran to my cabin, got dressed, put on my hat, and threw my eiderdown over my arm. I was halfway back to the deck again when I remembered my looking-glass, which I went back for. Also my typewriter and camera, and several other things. When I reached the deck, I left the eiderdown hanging over the rail, and with my looking-glass in my jacket pocket, I rushed into the dining saloon and pulled a long table out through the door and into the moonlight. The only other things I needed were an oar, which I found in a lifeboat, and a chair. I had to return to the saloon for this, and then I was complete. Tying the chair and table together with a bit of rope, I threw them overboard and jumped after them with the oar in one hand and the eiderdown wound around my stomach. I landed with a great splash and swallowed a lot of seawater, but was soon scrambling onto the table, which was floating quite near with a chair tied on. They were both bobbing in the waves. I pulled the chair after me. The forelegs of the table were sticking up in the air in a helpless sort of way, for it had landed on its back. I heaved the chair into the middle and sat down on it, with the oar across my knees, and the wet eiderdown spread out around my feet to dry in the moonlight. When I looked around, The old SSM was far away, and I was left all alone on my table boat on a wide ocean. I think this would make a good drawing. So I'll do it on the next page, where there's more room, on a bigger scale. I suppose I must have looked something like this. As you can see, I had not yet lost my other leg in those early days. Oh, pickle my carcass. How innocent I was. But that last drawing has taken me so long that I must go out and stretch my legs. Or rather, my leg, for my spike never needs stretching. That's another advantage that it has which I hadn't thought of before. Oh, blubberation. I am continuing the letter. It is a lovely night outside the cabin. The Arctic sun burning like 100 different coloured torches, with a polar bear on top of an iceberg immediately in front of it, and looking as though it's been cut out of black cardboard. It's what they call silhouetted, I think. Not that the bear would know. After stretching my leg, I came in and grilled myself a walrus cutlet. Very delicious. I shall continue now with more enthusiasm from where I left off. Isn't it wonderful? I'm beginning to enjoy writing to you. I didn't like you much at first. But you wait till I get some news of the White Lion. Then I'll really write. Oh, by the way, the gravy stain on the last page was Jackson's fault. What a clumsy beast he is. Well, there I was, all those years ago. I'm sorry about the new gravy stain. That is Jackson again. As I say, there I was, all those years ago, having jumped off the boat and sitting on the moonlit table, tossing on the waves, a bit lonely with the deep sea muttering around me. Yet after a bit, I began to realize that this was just the sort of thing for which I'd been craving in London. Why had I left England? For this sort of thing, of course. Then, instead of feeling lonely, I felt happier than I'd ever felt in my life before. I sang aloud. A thing I seldom do. And swarms of fishes lifted their moonlit heads out of the water to listen to me, their eyes like shillings. It was only after I'd no more breath left that they lowered themselves into the depth of the sea. I began to row the table toward the mountains on the skyline. It was a slow business, as you can imagine, with such a craft beneath me, and it was dawn before I reached the land and stepped off the table onto a beach of red sand, with turtle dog littered all over it, asleep, one of whom is now sleeping beside me. Jackson, in fact. I could see that he would be useful at once as a beast of burden, and possibly as a friend. As you can see, there was not much life in Jay when I first found him. Even so, he didn't want to come with me at first. I was irritated right from the start. Eiderdown. Orchid stalks. Then I strode into the hinterland, after having made a tear in the eiderdown, and pulled out all the feathers. I did this because I had discovered a damp valley full of orchids, and I filled my eiderdown full of them. It is their stalks that I smoke, Yeah, and very delicious they are, too, I would have you know. This page is absolutely wasted thanks to Jackson, who has just put his stupid grubby foot all over it, just as I was going to start. Blubber him. So many things have happened since then that it would be useless for me to touch upon them. It is the present that matters, not what happened to me before this diary. So from my next letter onwards, I will never mention my past again. But if you like, since I am in a good mood, I will make some pages of drawings to show you other kinds of landscape that have surrounded me during my journeys in search of what I know you must be longing to hear more about. The White Lion. I am sure you must be tantalized into a tantrum by my references to him. But he is coming, so do not get too irritated. Now for the drawings. Sometimes I feel the White Lion is watching me as I stalk him, and in my imagination his eye looks something like this. This is the kind of thing I saw quite a lot of in my early days. It was heavy going in these regions, but quite exciting. I stayed for 3 years. I named this waterfall after Jackson, who'd worked very hard that day. But afterwards I wished I hadn't. These are the kinds of creatures I saw a lot of. In the left-hand bottom corner is a baby crocodile coming out of an egg.